Mark, the Passion Translation, Chapter 11. Now, as they were approaching Jerusalem, they arrived at a place of the stables near Bethany, on the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, "As soon as you enter the village ahead, you will find the donkey's colt tied there that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it to me. And if anyone asks, 'Why are you taking it?' tell them the master needs it and will send it back to you soon." So they went and found the colt outside in the street, tied to a gate. When they started to untie it, some people standing there said to them, "Why are you untying that colt?" They answered just as Jesus has told them, "The master needs it, and he will send it back to you soon." So the bystanders let them go. The disciples brought the colt to Jesus and piled their cloaks and prayer shawls on the young donkey, and Jesus rode upon it. Many people carpeted the road in front of him with their cloaks and their shawls, while others gathered palm branches and spread them before him. Jesus rode in the middle of procession, with crowds going before him and behind him. They all shouted in celebration, "Bring the victory! We welcome the one coming with blessings sent from the Lord Yahweh. Blessings rest on this kingdom he ushers in, the kingdom of our father David. Bring us the victory in the highest realms of heaven." Jesus rode through the gates of Jerusalem and up to the temple. After looking around at everything, he left for Bethany with the 12 to spend the night, for it was already late in the day. The next day, as he left Bethany, Jesus was feeling hungry. He noticed a leafy fig tree in the distance, so he walked over to see if there was any fruit on it, but there was none, only leaves, for it wasn't yet the season for bearing figs. Jesus spoke to the fig tree, saying, "No one will ever eat fruit from you again," and the disciples overheard him. When they came into Jerusalem, Jesus went directly into the temple area and overturned all the tables and benches of all the merchants who were doing business there. One by one, he drove them all out of the temple courts, and they scattered away, including the money changers and those selling doves. And he would not allow them to use the temple courts as a fair for carrying their merchandise and their furniture. Then he began to teach the people, saying, "Does not the scripture say, 'My house will be the house of prayer for all the world to share'? But you have made it into a hangout of thieves." When the chief priests and religious scholars heard this, they began to hatch a plot as to how they could eliminate Jesus. But they feared him, and his influence because of the entire crowd was totally captivated by his teaching. So he and his disciples spent the night outside of the city. In the morning, they passed by the fig tree that Jesus spoke to, and it was completely withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to him, "Teacher, look, that's the fig tree you cursed, and now it's all shriveled up and dead." Jesus replied, "Let the faith of God be in you. Listen to the truth I speak to you. Whoever says to this mountain with great faith and does not doubt, 'Mountain, be lifted up and be thrown in the midst of the sea,' and believes that what he says will happen, it will be done. This is the reason I urge you to boldly believe for whatever you ask for in prayer. Be convinced that you have received it and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, if you find that you carry something in your heart against another person, release him and forgive him, so that your Father in heaven will also release you and forgive you of your faults. But if you will not release forgiveness, don't expect your Father in heaven to release you from your misdeeds." They came again into Jerusalem, and while Jesus was walking in the temple courts, the Jewish rulers, the chief priests, certain religious scholars, and the elders approached him. They came up to him and asked, "What right do you have to say all these things? Who gave you the authority to do all of this?" Jesus replied, "I too have a question to ask you. If you can answer this question, then I will tell you by what power do I do all these things." Where did John's authority to immerse come from? Was it from heaven or from people? Answer me now. They stepped away and debated amongst themselves, saying, how should we answer this? If we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why didn't you respond to John and believe in what he said? But if we say from the people, we fear the crowds, for they're convinced that John was a God's prophet. So they finally answered, we don't know. Then neither will I tell you where my power comes from to do these things, Jesus replied.